What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. This is going to be the most exciting video you've seen in a very long time because we are talking about callouts and details and some of the finer details of callouts and details. So clearly this is going to be the best video you've seen in a while. Quite informative, but nonetheless, please, if you happen to learn something, demolish that like button. It helps me out a lot. Also tells me that you might have learned something, like something. Yes, really helps me out. Okay. So we are in just a basic house model, and we don't care about the model so much as we care about how some of these detail views or floor plan views, whatever they might be, actually work. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So whenever you make a call out, I have the option over here of choosing a floor plan. This usually is the default, but maybe not, so be aware of that. So I have the option of floor plan, but I also have detail view. So really the whole point of this video is to determine what the difference is, when to use one versus the other, why you might want to use one or the other, and maybe even if you want to use one or the other. So I'm going to first go ahead and place this as a floor plan view, and I'm going to drop this here. And because I want to just show you how things work, like fully working, I want to actually place this on a sheet so we can see it populate there. And so I've got two sheets here. They're just blank. There's nothing there. But I've got this call out, and you can see because I made a call out and it was a floor plan call out, it showed up as a floor plan view under my floor plans, and that's really what we care about. I can see it right there. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that to my floor plan, and I want to put it here. And so I've got a floor plan view, and then we'll ultimately have a detail view. So I'm going to do the same thing, basically the exact same thing, but I'm going to go to this second floor plan. You'll notice already I don't see this call out or the tag or anything in this other floor plan view. So here I am, and we're going to go back to view, call out, and then this time I'm going to change that to a detail view. And I'm going to pick just about the same area. I don't care if it's the exact same area. That's irrelevant to what this video is. And so let's go ahead and place this here. And I have this floor plan 2, and you'll notice it didn't populate under the floor plans. Well, that's because, again, it is a detail view. And we'll actually see that under the detail views there. This is my first view there. I have none others, and it's detail 0. Okay, so I'm going to drag detail 0 onto my floor plan. And here we go. I want to make sure that's aligned just so things look right. I'll move this over. And now suddenly we are looking at what appears to be just about the same thing. And so immediately, really, at this point, let me explain some of the differences. So first thing with floor plans, you'll see that of course I have this on I'll put this on medium, and I'll do the same for the detail. That's also not necessarily relevant, but I want to do that. With this now, there's a couple of things that are different, and the first thing is that with floor plan views, I actually still have the option of coming down here within the properties to edit the view range. And so there's my view range here, and you'll notice this is, it's pulling from all the level 1 information. And if I come back to my level 1, I'll see my view range here is, of course, it's default, it's the exact same. I haven't changed it. And so the thing to be aware of there is if I make sure I look at this detail view, it's all about the properties that we're talking about, really, the difference between them. I see, there is no such thing as changing my range, and you can see my far clipping is no clip. I can't change any of this. Not only can I not change that, but there is no view range option. And so what is that telling us? Well, I mean, immediately when I see far clip settings that are the same as the parent view, that's telling me that it is basically inheriting all of the view range information from the parent view. So in other words, the floor plan or whatever view, you ended up drawing that in. In this case, it was my floor plan 2. And so with that, if I wanted to change the view depth for this detail view, I would actually have to do that within this floor plan view because that's where I drew it. So if I wanted to do that, maybe I put that at 1. Not a whole lot's going to change, especially within that view, but actually let's go ahead and put this at like 8, which I believe is above my doors. Maybe it's 9 feet above my doors. So then we can see now we've got some of these shorter doors. All these doors here are now being, like, we can see the doors below, but we're not cutting through the doors. So now if I come over to my floor plan, I can see now these are finally both different, and I can clearly see that this, again, the detail view is inheriting that view depth, the view range from the parent view. And that's really important because that's one of the biggest differences. So this far clip setting, I have other options, same as parent or independent. So at this point, you can actually make it so you have a bit of a different view range, because I can change this to independent at this point, and I can change my clip to have no clip, or I can clip with a line, and then I can literally choose how high I want this to clip. And so maybe I don't expect us to see a difference here, but I can set this to 4 feet. Oh, and of course, with 4 feet being the far clip, because I'm not seeing the ground, then basically moving all the way to the ground, down 9 feet, I am not seeing my doors, because to be able to see doors, you have to be able to see them on the ground as well. And so at that point, I am completely different than the main view. And because, of course, I can still see them here, and I didn't have to do anything. So the nice thing about that, I guess, is that to do any specific override with these detail views, you'd have to do it like after the fact and make it completely independent. Whereas if it's just same as the parent by default, you're kind of good to go, and it's something to know. Now, like before, if we're talking about preference when it comes to view range and all this, I typically like to use the floor plan views just by default, because I want to be able to have that view range option. There are plenty of times where I want to call out a detail in a particular place, and maybe I want to label the tag within the floor plan as maybe above or below or something like that, because maybe it's an elevated pit, maybe it's some sort of ceiling detail, and you're doing this in a ceiling, and you've got a fur down or something like that, and you're not exactly cutting through it, but it's pretty close. I'm talking about in the overall view, you're not cutting through it, but in the detail view, you want to. At that point, what I would do is, again, I would use that as a floor plan, because I would have the view range options to completely override this myself. And so like before, I want to go ahead and I'll put this at 10 feet, put our cut plane at 9, and we can see what we saw on the detail view, where we're looking clearly above the doors, and we're not cutting through like actually the opening of the doors. But if I come back to my floor plan 1, I can see, well, the view range is default. It's cutting through the doors like it would on a typical floor plan, but in the floor plan detail, it is absolutely doing what we told it to do on like an independent basis, like by itself, because I have that option of doing that within the floor plan view itself. That's really helpful, and I like being able to do that if I actually want to, because there's a lot of times I need to look at something, detail something that's above or below, but I want to call it out on that main overall floor plan. In a similar vein, floor plans, as opposed to details views, when it comes to view range, have another option. Where this isn't exactly view range, but you can kind of see in your mind how this is a bit related, but I have the option of including an underlay or not. So I can show level 1 or level 2 as an underlay, and I can look down, you have all the options that you would want to have with an underlay, because it is basically acting as another floor plan. It's literally another version of this overall floor plan, but as a detail view. Now, if I come to the detail view, I absolutely do not have the option of using an overlay. It just doesn't exist. There's nothing there. I'm literally stuck with what I have unless I start to override that based on the clipping, and that's really it. So let's talk about this now. The fact that with the floor plan, we only are able to see that this view is being referenced from this floor plan. Whereas if I come to floor plan 2, I don't actually see this floor plan detail 1. Like, I don't see either of the others in either of these other floor plans. So basically, I don't see 2 tags or 2 callouts here. And that's because by default, and the way it works for any callout, you're only going to see the original callout on the view that you placed it on. Well, and that makes sense. That's easy enough to know. And that's good, because it forces you to then determine that it doesn't just apply everywhere. Like if I were to make another floor plan, then I wouldn't necessarily see this cut out. And you might think, well, that doesn't make sense, because I've already done that. I've called it out somewhere, and I'd want to see it there. Well, you can absolutely do that, and that would be as if you wanted to actually reference it. And so we're in now making a new call out, and I can reference that. And so I can actually reference it here. And so I'd probably want to actually do that within this other view. But now I can redraw it, and I can see that, yeah, I have detail 1 and 2. Now, apart from all of that, some of the differences that we have between a floor plan and a detail type of view is that it is one option. And if we look in the detail view, this may be a reason why you'd want to use it. It's not enough of one for me, but it is kind of nice to be able to do this. And so we actually have the option of showing this in the parent view. And again, that's the default. We're looking at the default. That means, of course, the parent view is here. We've talked about that. But the option we have besides showing it in the parent view is actually showing that in intersecting views. And immediately once we do that, we see here hide at scales coarser than, and that it gives, we are familiar with that. And so basically anything more detailed than this, it wouldn't show it up. Okay. And so the idea here is that when we go to an intersecting view, that we could see this detail referenced. And so your first thought might be, well, okay, we'll come to this floor plan. Well, I don't see it there either. Well, because it turns out intersecting is not the same plane. Intersecting actually happens to mean the other plane. In this case, it would be the vertical plane. So how would we see this? Well, we would actually see this through a section. So let's go ahead and draw a section here. That just seems to make the most sense. So if I draw a section there, I can go into that section and we can see, sure enough, there is my detail. And it is specifically the detail view. It's not the other detail. And it just so happens to be that it's got all the same settings because it's literally referenced. And the interesting thing is that it isn't referenced like we've created a reference detail, because it is the actual detail. Looking at the top here, I can see there's no reference. Like, that is actually the detail. And that's cool that you have the option of doing that, because it's not technically a reference, even though it's referencing, but it is the actual detail, and that's great to know. This is nice because it will help give an idea of some of these clipping settings. If you do decide to overwrite them, you can make that independent. Instead of changing from no clip, I'll put that with a line because it seems to make the most sense. Then I can even just freely drag this and change this number. You can see it changing there. So lots that we can do once we actually see this in an intersecting view, and that's nice to have that as an option. Again, that's not like the most important thing for me, because I don't necessarily want to see this call out within a section. You know what I mean? Like, the sections are for section details, and you're going to block those out separately. So whenever you're looking at this, you may or may not want to be able to see that. And that's just me. That's my preference. What I'm based on the way I like to document. I don't necessarily want to see it because it doesn't make sense to see it in all the intersecting views, every elevation, every section that might cut through this portion of the floor plan would show it. And then you have to deal with filtering it out, and this it's just kind of a mess. So at this point, we've looked at essentially everything there is to know about floor plans and details, but one other thing about details in particular. And for the heck of this, I'm going to make a call out here. Basically the same. We're basically making a call out and a call out at this point. And so let's go ahead and make a call out. And I'm in the detail view, and you'll see I actually don't even have the option of making a floor plan detail call out, which is kind of interesting. But it is what it is, and that's kind of the way it works. Again, we wouldn't want to be able to create a floor plan detail within the actual detail, because then we'd start having differences in properties and things would get confusing, and you could start playing with view range that wouldn't make sense, because again, remember, within a detail view, your view range is set. It's based on the parent, and that's going to trickle down no matter how many children or callouts you have within those callouts. And so we can go ahead and draw this, and we're going to have the exact same options that we would have before. Again, I cannot change that to a floor plan. Now, if I come over here to the floor plan and I bring a callout over here, I actually have the option of making another floor plan, which is oftentimes what I do, because again, what I've said in the past is that I might have, in this case, a large floor plan, and I have a detail right here, and I have something that I need to detail that's above or below, and so I'd have all of this referenced correctly, but I'd have above or below underneath it, so I can still reference it from here. But the cool thing about floor plans is if you decide, well, I'm really happy with this, and for some reason I now want to use the detail and basically lock my view range settings, I can then come over here, and of course this is going to have to happen before I make the detail. I can end up making a detail view instead of the floor plan view. for my call out. So there's my detail, and so there it is. And so that's really nice because I can basically, once you make that detail, you're stuck with it, and everything you make within that is going to have to be a detail. Okay, and so there's one thing I did want to do is actually come to the overall floor plans and place an elevation. I've seen, this is probably the biggest reason why I wanted to make this video, because I've seen this happen so many times. So let's place this here. Nothing really doesn't matter right now. I'm going to use an interior elevation, and I want to go ahead and place that elevation on my sheet here, my blank elevation sheet, just so we can see that it's actually being referenced. We don't really care about anything the elevation wise right now, but we do care about this tag and what we see here. And so we can see the tag here. I have no filters on, no view templates applied, nothing. We just want to see everything and see how it works. But I want to come to my floor plans here, and we can see there's immediately a big difference. And so what is going on here? Well, immediately, because I have a floor plan view, it's acting as, you could say another version, or not really another version, but literally another floor plan. So it's another floor plan at a different view, whereas the detail view itself, again, is only pulling, 2D information, as well as, those locked view range settings. And so the idea is that you're trying to get a detail view of a specific area, and so you're not going to be trying to see what else is going on in 3D, and so that's kind of the point here. And so let's experiment further. Let's go ahead and place any sort of 3D object. In this case, a TV. We'll just go ahead and place this TV, like literally on the ground, just right there next to the tag. It doesn't necessarily matter. And my hope and guess is that we would see it within both of these views. And we do. So it's not necessarily 3D items, because you'll see 3D items, but when it comes to other views, you simply will not see other views that are not detail views. And that's what you have to know. If it's not a detail view, i.e. up here, look here, you see detail view, you won't see it within a detail view. And so that's what I see a lot of times. Lots of people ask me, like, why can't I see this elevation? Why can't I see this going on? And that's simply because 9 times out of 10, it's an elevation. We'll go through, is it hidden? Is it filtered out? Is the category turned off? We would go through all these things, phasing, whatever. And then we even go through views coarser than everything. And it turns out that the type of view they have is just a floor plan view, or it's not a floor plan view. It is actually a detail view. And so the nice thing about that is it is as simple as changing that. In some case, really you'll have to remake the view, but the idea is that it's not like anything's wrong. You can copy all the elements that you made and whatever, all the notes, and make a new view, and you'll have to make a new call out, and ultimately you'll be able to see the elevation that you're wanting to see. And so that's the big thing about this, is that you can't see other views within a detail view that are not detail as well. That is the big thing, the big takeaway. So sections, we can see we've already drawn a section here. The main thing here is, regardless of the type of floor plan view, they are visible, and that's just the way sections are. They're in that because they are intersecting. We're not on that same floor plan plane, that same horizontal plane. We're now like cutting vertically, and so the main thing here is that it is going to be the exact same. Now, you'll notice here, I do have the option of changing it to a detail. So really the only caveat with details is that once I change this to a detail, let's say I do change this to a detail, obviously I have it set up to where the visuals and the head and the tail look different, but that's irrelevant. The thing to be aware of is that if I come into the section, of course there's my other plan. I'll go ahead and put that on parent only. If I come in here and I decide to draw a section within my detail section, I only have the option of drawing a detail. And we just covered this with floor plans, but it is actually the exact same with sections. I cannot draw a true section view through a detail section, a detail view. I have to use a detail view if I have a detail view. That's the way it is, and that's just really is, you know. If you are familiar and you're comfortable using the details, and you've learned what you have through this video and you want to use that, just kind of know that once you're stuck with details, that's it. So now at this point we decide, well, I want to change this to a section. Well, then we have more options. Once I go to section, I don't have to choose a detail. I can then choose a completely separate wall section, and I prefer to do that kind of all the time. This is the default. It's just going to cut through everything. I prefer to do that because I want to have some of the clipping and extra details and extra information, properties that I wouldn't necessarily have with a typical detail view. But the sections, it's kind of up to you. If you want to keep the same scale and everything, great, you do that. But hopefully this video told you everything that you need to know about working with detail views versus floor plan views, section views, everything like that, because they can be a bit different. I would not be intimidated by them, and honestly, there isn't a wrong answer. It's more of which do you prefer, because detail is perfectly fine for most things, but then again, I like the flexibility of not having to worry about being locked to a view range with floor plans and just referencing the floor plans elsewhere. I don't need to see them in intersecting views, so all of those are preferences. If you have a floor plan view, you just know you're going to be able to see these elevations, no problem, unless they're hidden or anything else. So that's like a peace of mind knowing that it's not the type of view. So that will do for this video. If you happen to learn something, please demolish that like button. It helps me out so much. I hope to see you in the next video. Have a wonderful day. Thank you very much for watching. See you then.